is roughly about 47 and a half. Could be 48 if I round up, I'm a little fitter. Could be 47 if I'm not feeling so great. But it's in that window, and right then and there gives you a good idea. So that's the kind of number that you would be looking to do on race day. And there's always some accuracy issues with that. We'll get into that in a minute. But the other point I want to make on this is that look at the pace guidance of the bullets below each adjustment factor note. So marathon, the pace strategy is 6 miles, 12 miles, and then finish. So you've got, after mile 18, you've got another 8 miles of running at pretty much whatever pace you want. Now, as most of you know, there's not a lot of extra mojo at that point in time in the day. But the point being that we're going to follow this pacing strategy in the earlier part of your race, so when you get to those last 8 miles, you can run the race that you want. And the pacing download that we have available on the MarathonNation.us website right now under free resources, that spits out the paces for a marathon based on this kind of guidance. 6 miles, breaking it down, 12 miles steady. And then it's up to you. And the goal is we get you to mile 18 roughly in a place where if you're in a good spot, you're going to run to that desired ultimate finishing time. Okay. So this adjustment factor is what helps you take that 5K time and dial in a more appropriate pace for your actual race and your race simulation. Okay. This pace selection chart, I started working on it 2 days ago, and I really started getting into it. I'm kind of a geek like that, and I decided I pulled the plug on it, but I wanted it to be really good. So I'm going to release it to the Facebook fans in a couple weeks, probably 2 weeks, once we get through the launch and once I've had time to go back through and really do the math. It'll probably be in addition to that race download. So if you've already downloaded that race download sheet, I have your email somewhere, and I'll be emailing out an updated version of that to everyone as well. So don't feel like you have to chase it down. But the actual chart will give you a breakdown of VDOT, what your pace is for the 5K, and then what your paces will be for a marathon as you adjust it according to each incremental level of the adjustment factor chart. Okay, so that'll help you out as you go forward. And I apologize again, it's not ready for tonight, but like I said, wanted to do that right from the get-go. So, recapping for a second. You've done your 5K test, you got your VDOT, you took it to the chart, you massaged the VDOT a little bit with the adjustment factor, you came up with an ideal pace, or what you believe to be an ideal pace for your marathon. Well, now what? Well, we don't want to just enter a race day with this pace in our heads and try and do it. We actually want to put it to the test. And just a simple long run isn't good enough for me. Just going out and sitting on the same steady pace all day long isn't good enough for me. We have different types of race simulation workouts inside our training plans in Marathon Nation. These are 2 of them. So marathon race simulation workout number 1, you can see here, it's basically 50-50. We'll do 50% at whatever that final goal pace is, but slower than that, 30 seconds per mile. Okay, and then the second 50% is faster. And so we have a chance to really sort of go easy in the beginning, build into it, and then go fast at the end. And we don't, by going easy, we're not going to kill you by the end of your long run, but about 9 miles or whatever the commensurate time is for you with a 3-hour cap on your time, it's going to be a pretty good indicator of whether or not you can sustain that pace. If you can't sustain that pace for the second 9 miles after a very easy first 9 miles, then that pace is definitely too hard for you, right? You learn a lot during this time. Number 2 version is a little more difficult at 30-50-20. In this case, 30% is the easy part, 50% is a goal part, and then 20% similar to your marathon, which is why this is number 2. We actually have you run a little bit faster than your goal pace. Really kind of put yourself in a tough spot, see how you feel. A lot of times people get to that point and can't go any further or any faster, but we do put those numbers to the test because we really want to see, is it going to work? The last thing that I want to have happen is that you get to mile 18, 19, 20 on race day, and all of a sudden it dawns on you that you can't do what you want to do. And that happens all the time, which is why we're doing this webinar in the first place. But with our system here, I really believe we can do a great deal to eliminate that problem. And these are 2 great test workouts you can just pick up and do out of the box as you go. Okay? Let's see here. Next slide. So making the pace adjustments. Once you've gone through and you've actually done the actual race simulation workout, how do you want to adjust it? Well, if it's too easy, you can adjust the factor. The chart will have half a point of VDOT increments you can go by. So if you chose -2.5, maybe -2 is right for you. You can try that in the next race simulation workout. That's still too easy. Maybe you go -1.5 on race day if you're really trying to gamble. Yeah, that said, if the race that you're going to be doing is hilly, you probably want to keep the VDOT the same as it is during the race simulation. It may feel too easy to you now, but guaranteed by the time you get to race day in those hills, it's going to be challenging. So a course like Boston, everyone's all fired up to go as fast as they can, but very few folks PR at Boston. It's just the nature of the course, the nature of the beast. And so if you're going to do a race like that or similar to Boston, then I would advise you against taking something that feels too easy in training and making it harder on race day, when the race itself is going to make it harder. So now if the pace is too hard, you're going to want to first go back and make sure that you really did the pacing as we outlined in the workout. Did you overachieve? Because a lot of times people go a little too fast in the beginning. They think it's too slow. Make sure you really did the pacing as we lined out, and make sure your nutrition and hydration is dialed in. A lot of times subsequent poor performance towards the end of long runs is a result of dehydration, perhaps glycogen depletion. Maybe you didn't have a good breakfast, maybe you got a lot of stress. Solve those problems first, and only if you can cross all those off should I then recommend that you go ahead and adjust your VDOT back. Because really, you've proven you could do it in a 5K, and we've adjusted it by a factor of probably 2.5, maybe 2, maybe 3, depending. So you've already taken a number you've proven you can run, and you've made it easier, but we're finding it hard when you go longer. So really solve those other problems, and if you can't cross all those other off your list, then go back and you can adjust your VDOT. I'm not against it, but I also don't want you to sell yourself short either, okay? All right, continuing on. So poor pacing examples. As I talk, I want you to kind of visualize and just take a look at these charts here and get a sense for what this athlete's race was like. On the left, you see the pace. The higher the blue line, the faster the pace. The lower, the slower. And on the right, that's your heart rate. And the lower it is, the lower the heart rate is, the higher it is, the higher the heart rate is. So pretty straightforward stuff. So what a lot of people do on race day is they go out too fast. Maybe they're pinned in, maybe they don't know what's going on, but a tapered marathon runner, unless they are a seasoned athlete, has a very difficult time without staring at their watch, dialing in the right pace. Most people go too fast. You're rested, you're tapered, you're excited, there's 30,000 other people. Look, there's a guy dressed like a donkey. I'm so excited. I love my life. I'm so fit. Oh my God, I look at my watch and I'm running 8:30s. I said I was only going to run 9s, but I'm running 8:30s. This is great. This feels so easy. I'm just going to keep running 8:30s because look at me. This is so simple. My heart rate is low. I feel good. And then all of a sudden the athlete wakes up later and they're blown out of the water. They're like, oh my God, I'm totally dying here. What am I going to do? And this is an example exactly of what happens. The athlete started out way too fast, and for the first about 2 hours and 45 minutes here, was doing a great job of sustaining that pace, even though it was a little too fast. And then all of a sudden hit a wall. Now the pace looks simple. When you gloss over here to the heart rate side, you can see that this athlete's heart rate pretty much started out in like the mid to low 130s. And by the time he got to that 2 hour and 45 minute mark, his heart rate was 170. Basically, a steady pace over time, which is too fast, yielded an accelerated increase in your heart rate. Your heart rate will always go up over time as you become fatigued and your body becomes less efficient at processing energy. It's going to work harder. At that same time, this variation is way too much. And as a result, he couldn't sustain that pace. The only way to get his heart rate back down again, as you can see here on the left in the blue pace chart, was to stop running. Drop the pace down to like 24-minute miles. And he had to do that for a good chunk of time, probably close to 20 minutes. He tried to pick it up again a lot slower, probably closer to his more practical marathon pace. He was able to do that for about 25, 30 minutes, but then he was done again. And he ended up going into damage control mode with run walking. And then, of course, the finish line in sight, the last 0.2 miles, he was able to pick it up. Now, this might seem a little extreme, but I'm sure a lot of you can identify with this challenge. People really struggle with pacing, and this is what happens even to seasoned marathon runners, mostly to beginner and novice runners, but even to seasoned runners. They pick a pace, they end up going a little too fast. They can do it for a while because they're fit, they're tapered, they're rested, but they can't sustain it for the full 26.2 miles. Eventually their body pushes back and they stop. Okay, so what does proper race day execution look like? Well, you start off smart. Those first 6 miles, we're going to run that conservative pace. I know that maybe your race day cheat sheet says run 10-minute miles even for 26.2 miles. Inside Marathon Nation, with a race execution download you've seen, in our world, you start off at like 10:30s. And each mile on your way to mile 6, you kind of chip off a little bit of time. Could be as simple as 5 seconds per mile, or somewhere in there. Most folks, I'll say this now, but no cheating please, most folks run a little faster anyway. So even though I say 10:30s, they probably do a lot of 10:10s, 10:12s, 10:15s, a 10:05, which is fine by me because they're not going faster than 10. Because when you tell someone 10, then they take more, and they probably run a couple 9:30s in there, which is what really starts off the day in a bad spot. Because you can never get those heartbeats back again. They're never going to go down unless you slow down. And we don't want